So in the evenings, after our children have finally gone to bed, it's later and later these days as the sun stays out so late, Joe and I like to watch a little TV together. And usually it's an episode or two of whatever we happen to currently be binging on Netflix or Apple TV. And then when that's done, it's usually around 10 o'clock. So we put it on Seinfeld, and we try to stay awake long enough to make it to the opening of Stephen Colbert, but usually we fail. So we fall asleep in front of Seinfeld probably 3 or 4 nights a week, I would say. And I remember watching this show when I was growing up, and I especially remember the build-up to the series finale. What would happen? Would Jerry and Elaine get back together? Would they finally become television stars in their fictional world the same way that they were in reality? Would they have some kind of fairy tale ending? I hope after nearly 25 years it's okay for me to spoil the plot if you haven't watched it. But instead of a happy ending, we saw Jerry, Elaine, George, and Kramer prosecuted for failure to render aid to someone in distress. They were arrested for violating the Good Samaritan law. Now, even though the finale was kind of disappointing from my perspective, the fact that these terribly insensitive, self-centered people stood by and laughed at somebody in trouble at least seemed pretty in character for them. They had nothing else to do. They had no excuse for not helping, but they took pleasure in someone else's misfortune rather than offering assistance. Classic Seinfeld behavior. But these are fictional characters, extremes of ordinary people. Most of us, no matter how selfish we can be at times, would help someone else if we thought we could and we thought we were needed, right? Right? Maybe. It depends on the circumstances, I think. I mean, I'm sure that the religious folks in the parable that Jesus tells would have said that they would render aid to someone in distress too, if not for the places they had to be and the risk to reaching their destination. And so often we interpret this parable as being about the rigidness of religious convictions, about the mistaken emphasis on remaining ritually clean at the expense of our neighbor in need. But if we look beyond those specific concerns, what do these people have in common? They have somewhere to be. Where were they going? We don't know. But the road from Jerusalem to Jericho is an 18-mile stretch of arid, desert-like conditions, a dangerous, rugged place. You descend over half a mile on the journey. Lots of places for thieves and bandits to hide. So everybody hearing this would have understood how dangerous it was and how long a journey that would be if you were on foot or on an animal that's not especially efficient. So wherever it was that they were going, I think it's noteworthy that they didn't have time for this particular good deed. They didn't have time, or at least they thought. They knew the Torah, they knew the words of the prophets, but whatever was on their mind or on their agenda, at that moment, seemed to be the higher priority. Now, maybe this seems like a far-fetched illustration, like Jesus just kind of using a creative literary device to make a point about the spiritual emptiness of the religious leadership of the day. But there was an experiment in the 1970s at Princeton Seminary that bore all this out quite literally. A group of seminarians training for priesthood were told to prepare a sermon on the Good Samaritan. They did their preparation in a classroom, and then they were directed one at a time to go to a studio a ways away to deliver the sermon. And along the way, they would encounter a researcher posing as a destitute person coughing and in obvious need of help. As each student was told it was their turn to go over to the studio, some were told that they were late and they needed to hurry. Everyone was waiting for them. Some were told that they were right on time. And some were told that they had plenty of time, but they should go ahead over just to put themselves at ease before they began. Which group do you think was the most likely to stop and help the person in need? Only 10% of the people who were in a hurry even acknowledged the man. Only 10%. While they're preparing a sermon on the Good Samaritan, 63% of those who thought they had time stopped to help. So what does this tell us? Even while praying and preaching about this very parable, if we're in a hurry, we're not actually very likely to emulate the Good Samaritan's kindness. So are the seminarians who didn't stop, are they bad people? Are they anything at all like Jerry and Elaine and their friends? Probably not. I mean, in all likelihood, these are devoted, faithful people who want to follow Jesus and thought they were giving their lives to that and thought they were doing the right thing by doing the assignment that their professors gave them while training for their ministry. But the fear of being late, or of missing something, or of disappointing the expectations of those on the other side of the journey made them blind to the needs of their neighbors in the moment. We're not bad people either, but we're busy people. We are constantly in a hurry. Even retired people these days, I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with somebody who was newly retired and said, "So what are you up to now?" And inevitably people respond, "I'm even busier than I was before. I'm doing all the things that I never got to do." We are an incredibly busy society, but if we are busy all the time, we're missing a lot. The researchers in that Princeton study talked about our busyness leading to a phenomenon known as narrowing of the cognitive map. Narrowing of the cognitive map. And basically that means that we aren't present enough in the moment to notice what's really happening. And consequently, we make choices that not only fail to benefit those around us, but fail to benefit ourselves. We neglect our own needs, physically, relationally, and spiritually. How many times have we told ourselves we're too busy to work out, or too busy to eat right, or too busy to spend time with our children because we've got so much work to do, too busy to pray? Life passes by in a flash if we let it, and circumstances or chance can take control of our direction day to day and in the long term if we allow ourselves to be guided by that cycle of never-ending busyness. German theologian and anti-Nazi dissident Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote in his letters and papers from prison, "As time is the most valuable thing that we have, because it is the most irrevocable, the thought of any lost time troubles us whenever we look back. Time lost is time in which we have failed to live a full human life, to gain experience, learn, create, enjoy, and suffer. It is time that has not been filled up, but left empty." Our lives are full of responsibilities and obligations and commitments, and we keep adding more and more. And the question to ask us is, do we feel full? Do these things fill us up, or do they leave us empty? Much like we talked about last week with our physical items and our worries, are there commitments or obligations that are holding us back? What is keeping us too busy and hurried to be awake to the moment? What is narrowing our cognitive maps? As we try to clear out our physical clutter from our homes and our church and our spiritual clutter from our hearts, let's clear out the clutter from our calendars and open our eyes to what is right before us and find our lives full of love for God and love for our neighbors, that we might follow the example of the Good Samaritan and show mercy and kindness to everyone we encounter. Amen.